If silence is simply the absence of sound, why does it remain intact even when noise fills the world? This question immediately exposes a contradiction in how silence is usually understood. In modern thinking, silence is defined negatively. It is treated as a pause, a gap, or a temporary interruption between sounds. When noise appears, silence is assumed to disappear. Yet this assumption does not hold up under careful examination. Does not seem to destroy something in order to exist. It appears, resonates, and fades, while something more stable remains present throughout. This suggests that silence may not be the opposite of sound at all. To clarify this, a distinction is necessary. There is acoustic silence, meaning the absence of audible sound. But there is also ontological silence, the background condition in which sound, thought, and experience appear. Ibn Arabi argues that true silence cannot be broken because it is not the absence of sound. It is the condition that makes sound possible in the first place. Modern psychological life is characterized by constant stimulation. Many people report persistent mental noise, cognitive overload, and discomfort with quiet environments. Silence is often avoided rather than sought, not because it is empty, but because it reveals what is usually covered by distraction. From a cognitive science perspective, this discomfort is closely related to overactivation of the default mode network. This is the brain system responsible for inner narration, self-referential thinking, and continuous mental commentary. When external stimulation decreases, internal activity becomes more noticeable rather than disappearing. Behaviorally, this leads to compulsive engagement with sound, screens, and information. Stillness is interpreted as a problem to be solved rather than a state to be understood. Neuroscience clarifies that silence does not eliminate cognitive activity. It reduces sensory input, exposing internal processes more clearly. The core issue is conceptual. Modern individuals often confuse silence with emptiness or threat. Ibn Arabi reframes silence not as absence, but as the most stable and reliable dimension of reality, one that remains present, regardless of noise. Ibn Arabi is often described as a mystic of inward retreat, but this description misses the precision of his thoughts. He was fundamentally a metaphysician concerned with how reality sustains itself beneath expression and articulation. For Ibn Arabi, silence is not a psychological state or a spiritual technique. It is an ontological condition. He distinguishes between silence as ground and speech as manifestation. Speech, sound, and expression arise, change, and disappear. Silence remains. The key premise is crucial. Silence is not produced by stopping sound. It precedes sound. It is already present before any expression occurs. Because of this, silence cannot be damaged or interrupted by speech. Rationally stated, what gives rise to expression cannot be destroyed by expression. Modern thinking often treats silence as fragile and temporary. Ibn Arabi treats it as ontologically prior, more fundamental than any sound that appears within it. The first core teaching establishes silence as the ground from which all expression emerges. Sound, speech, and articulation do not oppose silence. They modify it. Ibn Arabi's logic is direct. Speech is a temporary configuration of silence, not its negation. When sound arises, silence does not disappear. It provides the space in which sound can be perceived at all. A simple illustration makes this clear. Written text requires a blank page. The page is not erased by the words written on it. Similarly, Sound requires acoustic space. Without a silent background, sound would be indistinguishable. Cognitive science expresses this principle through the signal-to-noise ratio. Perception depends on contrast against a stable background. Without relative silence, no sound could be detected. A common misconception must be corrected. Silence is not negation or lack, it is capacity. What allows expression cannot be negated by expression. Silence enables manifestation without being diminished by it. The second teaching clarifies why silence cannot be interrupted in the way sound can. The key distinction is between interruption within silence and interruption of silence. Ibn Arabi argues that sounds occur in silence, not against it. Noise may interrupt other noises, but it does not interrupt silence itself. A cognitive analogy helps clarify this point. Thoughts arise in awareness, but awareness is not damaged by thought. When one thought replaces another, awareness remains intact. The contents change, the field does not. Neuroscientifically, this aligns with the model of consciousness as a field in which experiences appear and disappear, events occur. The field remains stable. An everyday example makes this intuitive. Noise in a room does not eliminate the space of the room. The room remains the container for whatever occurs within it. Silence remains intact because it is not an event. It is the condition in which events happen. The third teaching extends this logic inward. Mental noise presupposes a silent background of awareness. Thought does not disrupt silence, it depends on it. Ibn Arabi emphasizes that silence is not achieved by stopping thought. Thought arises within silence, without a silent background. Thought could not be noticed, differentiated, or remembered. Cognitive science supports this through the concept of meta-awareness. The ability to recognize thoughts as contents rather than identity. Meta-awareness distinguishes the field of awareness from what appears within it. Psychologically, emotional regulation improves when awareness is not identified with thought. Anxiety increases when mental content is mistaken for reality itself. Recognizing the silent background stabilizes attention. The clarification is important. Silence does not require mental inactivity. It requires recognizing what is already present beneath activity. What is silent is not inactive. It is foundational. Ibn Arabi extends this framework to theology with consistency. He argues that the divine is most silent because it is most complete. Silence here does not mean withholding speech. It means exceeding the need for expression. Conceptually, God is not silent in opposition to speech. Divine reality is silent because it is not limited to articulation. Expression belongs to manifestation, not to ultimate source. A modern parallel clarifies this idea. Source code governs the behavior of a system without appearing in the user interface. The interface displays functions. The source remains silent. Psychologically, expecting ultimate reality to explain itself verbally leads to confusion. Language belongs to differentiation. Divine reality precedes differentiation. The insight is precise. The deepest silence is not the absence of meaning. It is an excess of meaning that cannot be reduced to speech. If silence is foundational, why does it feel uncomfortable to many people? The paradox lies in control. Silence removes narrative control, exposing awareness without structure imposed by language. Cognitive science explains this discomfort. The loss of cognitive scaffolding increases. Uncertainty without continuous narration. The mind cannot easily predict or manage experience. Ibn Arabi's subtle claim is that this discomfort arises from ego, not from silence itself. Silence does not threaten existence. It threatens the sense of control maintained by constant interpretation. A misconception must be clarified. Silence is not emptiness. It is non-interference. What cannot be controlled is often mistaken for what is absent. The key insight is that silence feels threatening only when it is misunderstood. When recognized correctly, it becomes stabilizing rather than unsettling. This framework has direct practical implications. The first shift is conceptual. Silence must be distinguished from lack of stimulation. Silence is not achieved by eliminating sound. It is recognized as the background in which sound occurs. Psychologically, this involves allowing sound and thought without identification. Noise can be present without disrupting silence when awareness is not fused with content. Emotionally, anxiety decreases when silence is recognized as stable. Neuroscientific studies show improved attentional regulation when awareness is decoupled from sensory and cognitive content. Importantly, this does not require withdrawal from life. Ibn Arabi's position does not advocate retreat or suppression. Silence becomes accessible in the midst of activity. The practical outcome is subtle but powerful. Silence is no longer something to be created. It is something to be recognized. The central conclusion follows clearly. Silence cannot be broken because it is not an object, event, or state. It is the ground in which all events occur. What contains sound cannot be destroyed by sound. Noise appears and disappears. Silence remains. Ibn Arabi's lasting contribution is a philosophy in which silence is not emptiness, but the condition of all meaning. It is not fragile, temporary, or dependent on circumstances. Noise comes and goes. Silence remains.